Well, hello everybody. How are we doing today? Day 15 of the Black History teachings and lessons about the ring grid and the electromagnetic world. Also, today we are working on the melanated origin of the tribes of Canada. The melanated original tribes of Canada. So what is the kicker? 14 days we built the case. We have documented the planetary grid from Africa to Asia, from Pacific to the Americas. We verified mounds, earthworks, and pyramids on every continent. We've confirmed melanated original populations at every single place and every node. Now we arrive at the nation where we're headquartered, okay? The nation where Colonel Titus Cornelius fought, the nation where my family's documented lineage runs deep. The nation that every Canadian child is told was discovered and settled by Europeans. Today, we meet the people who were here first, whose copper built every node we have studied, whose mound network stretches from northwestern Ontario to New Brunswick, whose astronomical instruments in Alberta predate Stonehenge, whose names, in their own languages, mean the same things as every other melanated original group on the planetary grid. The Canadian tribes are the kicker because they are the living proof that the grid was never broken and it is right here under our feet in the land where we stand today in Canada. Ain't that amazing? So, the foundational fact. Here we go. So, here we are. Yeah, so the first fact that we should teach before we meet the tribes, we need to establish one foundational fact that changes everything that follows. The word in Anishinaabe, the name the largest family of Canadian tribes calls themselves, translates directly as the original people or the good humans or the people from whence lowered. The root, Ashi, means original, first, genuine. Nabi means people or human being. These people did not call themselves by color or geographic location. They call themselves the original. This is not mythology. This is what the name means in their own language, recorded by their own historians and linguists, including Ojibwe scholar Basil Johnston. Now, hold that. The original people building mounds that connected to Cahokia, Ohio, the Gulf Coast, and the Great Lakes Copper Network, carrying copper that ended up in Uluburan shipwrecks crossing the Mediterranean. Their name is their own declaration of primordial status. And they are not alone. Every major Canadian tribal nation carries with its own name or origin story the declaration of original first or ancient status. This is the thread we follow today. Moving on. The Anishinaabe Nation. The Anishinaabe are the largest indigenous language family in Canada and the United States, stretching from the Ottawa River Valley across all of northern Ontario, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan. They include the Ojibwa, Odawa, Potawatomi, right? Name meaning the Algonquin, the Saltex, Nipissing, and the Mississauga nations. Name meaning Anishi equals original, first, genuine. Nabi equals people, humans, literally the original humans. Territory, Ottawa River Valley, all of Northern Ontario, Great Lakes, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, the entire Great Lakes Copper Heartland. Earthworks or mounds, Kenachiwanu, Manitou Mounds on Rainy River, Canada's largest mound complex, 23 burial mounds up to 40 feet tall, inhabited continuously for 8,000 to 9,500 years. Archaeological sites found at Morrison Island showing 1,000-year-old copper tool manufacturing culture using copper extracted from north of Lake Superior. Mhm. The grid connection, Great Lakes Copper Node, direct stewards of the 500,000-ton copper deposit, the copper that reached Uluburan, that lined Hopewell burial mounds that appeared in Manitoba earthworks. It came from Anishinaabe territory. They are the living custodians of the grid's primary North American mineral node. The Midwin Connection. The Anishinaabe Midwin Society, the Grand Medicine Society, is one of the oldest continuously operating knowledge keeping institutions in North America. Oral and written records on birch bark scrolls, I think it's called Migwasabak, carry cosmological knowledge encoded in the same astronomical and geometric language as the mound builders of Ohio, the pyramid builders of Egypt, and the songline keepers of Australia. This is a grid science preserved in living tradition. So these are all like melanated tribes, okay? That's the original. The Anishinaabe is the original, one of the originals, right? That's where we find our melanation from. Those tribes have our melanation, the originally tribes that are melanated. That's crazy. The Haudenosaunee, Iroquois Confederacy. People of the Longhouse. The Longhouse is the architectural symbol of a unified confederacy stretching from east to west, a physical grid across the land. All of southern Ontario, St. Lawrence River, northern New York State, the corridor between Great Lakes and the Atlantic is their territory. Earthwork mounds, extensive palisaded villages, and ceremonial earthworks through southern Ontario. Trade and ceremonial connections confirmed to Hopewell, Ohio Valley earthwork network through exotic material exchange. Obsidian, copper, marine shell gorgets, all found in Haudenosaunee archaeological context. The grid connection, corridor node, the Haudenosaunee territory is the physical corridor connecting the Great Lakes copper node to the Atlantic maritime routes. Their famous Trail of Peace, the Iroquois Trail, ran east-west across this corridor, the same orientation as the Longhouse itself. The Great Law of Peace, grid governance, the Haudenosaunee Great Law of Peace. Gashagawa is one of the oldest democratic constitutions in human history. It governed a confederacy of 5, then 6 nations through a sophisticated system of clan mothers, chiefs, and councils. The farmers of the United States Constitution studied it directly. Benjamin Franklin cited it explicitly. This is not primitive governance. This is the same sophisticated social architecture seen in the Timbuktu manuscript tradition. The Harapan urban planning, and the Cahokia regional governance structure, all expressions of the same original knowledge system operating through cultural forms. The suppression pattern. The mainstream curriculum teaches the Iroquois Confederacy as a curiosity of pre-contact history. It almost never teaches that the U.S. Constitution was directly modeled on it. This omission is not accidental, acknowledging that melanated people created the most sophisticated governance model in North America before European arrival destroys the narrative of European civilizational superiority. Wonder why. The Micmac Nation. Micmac derived from Nicmac, meaning my kin, friends, or my allies. The word carries the meaning of a people who are fundamentally defined by relationship and connection. Their territory, all maritime Canada, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, parts of Quebec, and Newfoundland, Canada's entire Atlantic coast. The earthworks and mounds there, the Augustine Mound in Northumberland County, New Brunswick, and a Dena culture burial mound connected to the Ohio Valley Network, identified through Micmac oral tradition by Elder Joseph Augustine in 1972, the only known Adena mound in maritime Canada, proving the eastern seaboard was integrated into the continental mound. The grid connection, mound network, sorry. The grid connection, the Atlantic Gateway Node. The Micmac territory is the eastern terminus of the transcontinental grid network and the western terminus of the Atlantic maritime route documented in the cocaine mummy evidence from day 6. There, canoe technology and maritime knowledge connected the continental grid to the Atlantic crossing. What does the oral tradition as the archaeological map say? The story of Elder Joseph Augustine is one of the most powerful demonstrations of the framework's thesis about suppressed knowledge, my frameworks, okay? As a young boy, Joseph visited a mound with his father, who told him stories of ancient ancestors dancing near it. In 1972, while a gravel company was actively destroying the site, Joseph retrieved stone and copper artifacts from the mound himself. These materials were presented to professional archaeologists who confirmed it was a genuine Adena burial site. The oral tradition was more accurate than the professional archaeological record. The knowledge keepers preserved what the institutions erased. Ah, boy. Now, we move to the Biotuck, the deliberately erased eastern node. Name meaning, the Beothuk. Name's exact meaning is debated, but they were known by every neighboring nation as the people of the red ochre. Named for their most sacred practice, coating their bodies, tools, homes, canoes, and the bones of their dead in red iron oxide. Where have you heard that before, right? All their territory, all of Newfoundland, Canada's eastmost territory, closest point to Europe, the natural first landfall of any Atlantic crossing. So any Atlantic crossing will naturally fall in their area. Their earthworks and mounds, elaborate burial practices, including burial boxes, scaffold burials, and grave offerings of figurines, pendants, and tool replicas, evidence of continuous occupation of Newfoundland going back thousands of years through multiple predecessor cultures before the Beothuk cultural formation around 1500 Common Era. Their grid connection, Atlantic crossing node. Newfoundland is 18 kilometers from Labrador across the Strait of Belle Isle. The Beothuk were the easternmost Canadian people, positioned exactly at the Atlantic Gateway documented in the cocaine mummy transatlantic contact evidence. The red ochre signature. This is the kicker within the kicker. The red ochre is iron oxide, the same sacred mineral used in burial practices going back 300,000 years in Africa. It appears at every node of the planetary grid, yo. Blombos Cave, South Africa, red ochre engravings 75,000 years ago. Jebel Arud, Morocco, 315,000-year-old anatomically modern humans, red ochre present in the burial context. Kush, Moro burial mounds, red ochre used in royal burial preparation. Hopewell burial mounds, Ohio, red ochre found in ceremonial context. Aboriginal Australia, red ochre used in ceremony and burial for 50,000 plus years continuously. Beothuk, Newfoundland, Canada, red ochre on bodies, tools, homes, canoes, and the bones of the dead. A sacred identity practice so central that removing it was the harshest punishment. Come on, yo. Like, come on. Like it says here, this is not independent invention. It is one spiritual technology carried by the original family from Africa to Newfoundland. There's no doubt, man. The Beothuk used red ochre in a way that is virtually identical to practices documented across Africa, the Middle East, and the Pacific. Coating the bones of the dead is a specific ritual documented from South Africa to Australia to Newfoundland. This is not independent invention. This is the same original spiritual technology carried by the same original people, expressing the same cosmology at the eastern tip of Canada that is expressed at the southern tip of Africa. The Beothuk are the Atlantic receipt of the planetary grid's most ancient ceremonial language. Talk to me now. What is the suppression pattern? The Beothuk were systematically exterminated. By 1829, within 2 centuries of sustained European contact, the last known Beothuk, Shawanzahit, died of tuberculosis in St. John's. So, European settlers actively hunted them. Their coastal resources were seized. They were driven inland to starvation. Canada's first documented genocide destroyed the eastern terminus of the Atlantic Gateway Node. This was not random violence, yo. It was not random violence. They were targeted. The erasure of the people who carried the oldest sacred knowledge on Canada's Atlantic coast was the erasure of the grid's Atlantic receipt. Oh boy. Moving on. The Cree Nation, the Northern Grid Keepers. Name meaning Nahiawak. Nahiawak in Cree means those who speak our language exactly, certainly in me, or the people who speak the same. The Cree call themselves the people defined by precise, exact communication. The people. Territory, the largest geographic territory of any Indigenous nation in Canada, from Quebec west to Alberta, from Hudson Bay north to the subarctic. The Cree territory covers more of Canada than any other single nation. Earthworks and mounds, extensive trade network connections to Manitoba mound complexes. James Bay Cree maintains ceremonial knowledge systems connected to the same woodland period networks that built the Manitoba and Ontario mound complexes. Northern Corridor Node, their grid connection. The Cree territory is the vast northern corridor connecting all eastern and western grid nodes. No goods, no knowledge, and no people moved across the northern half of the continent without passing through Cree territory. Man. Moving along. Here we go. The Blackfoot Confederacy Plains Grid Masters. Look, this is like my first time doing this, so please excuse if I don't pause it, keep it running, and I'm looking for stuff, right? I'm very new to this. I'm 56 years old, so listen, this technology and all this stuff is amazing to me. Just getting used to it now, so please forgive me for any faux pas. Okay, thank you very much. Just wanted to say that. The Blackfoot Confederacy, the Plains Gridmasters. Okay, the Nitsitapi means the real people or the original people, the Nitsitapi. Another direct declaration of primordial status in their own language. Their territory, Alberta Plains, southern Saskatchewan, Montana, the exact territory where the Majorville Cairn medicine wheel was built 5,500 years ago. The Majorville Cairn in southern Alberta, the oldest identified medicine wheel in North America at 5,500 years old, older than Stonehenge, a circular network earthwork astronomical instrument aligned to solstices and stellar events, connected to a network of medicine wheels across Alberta and Saskatchewan that map the same astronomical knowledge system as every other grid node. The grid connection, Plains astronomical node. The Blackfoot Confederacy is the custodian of Canada's most ancient confirmed astronomical monument. Their sun ceremonialism, vision quest traditions, and sacred geometry of the medicine wheel all express the same grid science operating at Giza, Angkor Wat, and Cahokia encoded in earth and stone on the Alberta plains. The Majorville Cairn, 5,500 years old. The Majorville Cairn in southern Alberta is a circular stone monument 5,500 years old, predating both Stonehenge, completed 2,500 before Common Era, and the Great Pyramid of Giza at 2,560 before Common Era. It is aligned to astronomical events. It sits at the center of a hub and spoke design identical in principle to the medicine wheels of Wyoming and the stone circles of Britain and Africa. The Blackfoot Confederacy built an astronomical observatory on the Alberta plains when Egypt was still 1,500 years from constructing the Great Pyramid. This is the Canadian receipt of the global grid science tradition, and it is 5,500 years old. The connection, 40 Mississippian sites found in Alberta, prove the network of the Cahokia, of Cahokia, the Great Mound City, extended all the way to the Canadian Plains. What about that? Awesome, right? The names that declare the origin. Yes. So, one of the most powerful pieces of evidence in this framework is the meaning of the names these nations gave themselves. Across every continent, the original melanated peoples of each grid node called them names as some version of the same thing. Okay, so call themselves some version of the same thing. Call themselves. Sorry. All right, the Anishinaabe, Canada, the original people, the good humans, the Niitsitapi, the Blackfoot, the real people, the Inuit, the Arctic, the people, the Nihayawak, the Cree, the exact speaking people, the Song, Korean African, the people, the Aeta, the Philippines, the people, the pattern across every continent. The original populations call themselves the people. This is a shared memory of a single original family before dispersal. So let's map the Mound network, okay? Canada's grid. The northwestern Ontario, Kenachiwa Num. The Rainy River District, 23 burial mounds up to 40 feet tall, inhabited 8,000 to 9,500 years. Canada's largest pre-European structures, stewardship, the Anishinaabe, the Ojibwe Rainy River First Nation. Grid connection, Great Lakes Copper Node. The continent-wide trading network centered here carried Great Lakes copper in every direction. So that's the northwestern Ontario node. Then we have the central Ontario, the Rice Lake Serpent Mound. Peterborough County, 194-foot serpent effigy mound, 8 accompanying burial mounds built by Point Peninsula culture, the Middle Woodland period. Identical design to the Great Serpent Mound in Adams County, Ohio. The grid connection, Hopewell interaction sphere, this same knowledge system that built the Ohio earthworks, built this serpent on the shores of Rice Lake. The southwestern Manitoba linear mounds, the Sourcefort complex, Souris River Valley near Melita, over 100 burial mounds across Manitoba. Linear mounds up to 198 meters long. Materials include Great Lakes copper and Gulf Coast conch shells. Grid connection, Mississippi Great Lakes Trade Corridor. Gulf shells carried 3,000 kilometers north to Manitoba, prove one integrated continental ceremonial network. Alberta, 40 Mississippian sites. Red Deer River region and surrounding Alberta, 40 documented village and ceremonial sites related to the Mississippian Temple Mound culture, 1,000 kilometers from the mound builder homeland of Cahokia. Grid connection, Cahokia Northern Extension, the city that was larger than London in 1100 CE, extended its network all the way to Alberta. Wow! Southern Alberta, Majorville Cairn, Southern Alberta Plains. 5,500-year-old circular stone medicine wheel, the oldest confirmed astronomical monument in Canada, predates Stonehenge by 1,000 years. The Grid Connection Plains astronomical node, part of a network of medicine wheels across Alberta and Saskatchewan, all aligned to solar and stellar events. How about that? The New Brunswick Augustine Mound, Northumberland County, Adena Cultural Burial Mound, the same culture that built burial mounds in Ohio, contains stone artifacts, copper objects, and textile fragments identified through Micmac oral tradition. Grid connection, the Atlantic Gateway, Adena culture presence in maritime Canada confirms the eastern seaboard was fully integrated into the continental mound network. Do you hear what I'm saying? All the way across, baby. The Newfoundland Beothuk territory, all of Newfoundland Island, continuous human occupation evidence going back thousands of years. Red ochre, sacred practices connecting to the same ceremonial tradition documented from South Africa to Australia. The grid connection, the Atlantic crossing node, Canada's closest point to Europe, the natural terminus of transatlantic contact routes documented in cocaine mummy evidence. Okay, so what does this all prove? Well, we now have a complete picture. Let us state exactly what Day 15 proves within the larger 30-day framework. The grid was always here, yo. Every major Canadian province and territory, Ontario, Manitoba, Alberta, Saskatchewan, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, Quebec, contains documented archaeological evidence of mound building, earthwork construction, or astronomical monument creation. This is not fringe or pseudo history. Hello, wake up. This is the official archaeological record of Canada's own national parks, historic site designations, and museum collections. The copper origin is confirmed. The Anishinaabe were the direct stewards of the Great Lakes copper deposit that powered the entire North American grid. Their mound complex on Rainy River is the northern terminus of the same Hopewell interaction sphere that built the Newark earthworks, the Serpent Mound of Ohio, and the Poverty Point complex in Louisiana. The copper that reached the European Bronze Age shipwrecks came from their territory. I'm telling you, it's a global network, yo, but you don't want to listen, so I'm going to have to teach you. The oral tradition is the most accurate record. The Augustine Mound was found because a Micmac elder remembered his father's stories. The Midwin, birch bark scrolls preserved cosmological knowledge that professional archaeology is still catching up to, by the way. The Anishinaabe Seven Fires prophecies encoded knowledge of the coming of Europeans centuries before contact. The oral tradition is not mythology. It is the most durable information storage technology in human history. Do you hear what I'm saying? The red ochre is a planetary receipt. The Beotuk's use of red ochre in burial practice connects Canada's Atlantic coast to the same ceremonial, traditional, documented from 300,000-year-old African burial sites to 50,000-year-old Aboriginal Australian ceremony. Full circle, baby. One sacred material, one spiritual technology, carried from the original African homeland to the easternmost tip of Canada. The Beothuk are the Atlantic proof of the planetary grid. I really hope y'all are listening to this. I know some of you probably come out here, what is he talking about? I promise you, you're going to come back to this and you're going to be like, holy shit, he was talking the truth. But we'll get to that. Canada was built on a grid, the country that Colonel Titus Cornelius fought for, the country where the Titus family was systematically displaced. Don't worry, I'll talk about that later. The country where Rise United University is building its headquarters, I won't tell you where, is not empty colonial territory. It is one of the most densely documented nodes of the planetary grid in the entire Western Hemisphere. The mounds are still here, the copper is still here, the knowledge is still here, and the descendants of the original grid keepers are still here as well. The suppression pattern in Canada. Suppression 1, the mound builder myth in Canada. When European settlers first encountered the Manitoba burial mounds in the 1800s, they refused to attribute them to Indigenous peoples. Canadian mound scholars, following American theories, proposed the mounds were built by Vikings, Israelites, Toltecs, or other non-Indigenous peoples. Anything except the people who are standing right there. The Manitoba History Journal documented this explicitly. Early scholars proposed giant white Jewish Toltec Vikings as mound builders rather than acknowledge the sophisticated indigenous cultures already living on the land. It's called colorism, yo. This is the same suppression pattern documented from Egypt to the Indus Valley the systemic refusal to credit melanated people with their own architectural achievements. Ain't that some shit? Suppression pattern 2, the deliberate destruction of mound sites. Mound sites across Ontario and Manitoba were destroyed by agricultural development, urban expansion, and deliberate demolition throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. Many were plowed flat for farmland. Others were excavated and looted. The Augustine Mound in New Brunswick was actively being destroyed by a gravel company in 1972 before Elder Joseph Augustine personally intervened. What would have been destroyed if he had not acted? How many other mound sites were lost before any elder could respond? I bet you there's so many. But with LIDAR, we gonna find it. Oh, we gonna find it. Anyway, sus- suppression pattern 3, the Beothuk genocide. Full genocide. Canada's first documented genocide was a systemic extermination of the Beothuk, the people carrying the oldest sacred tradition on Canada's Atlantic coast. Their bones were stolen and shipped to Scotland, where they sat in a museum for nearly 200 years before being repatriated in 2019. The last Beothuk died in 1829. Within 2 centuries of European contact, the entire eastern Atlantic node of the Canadian grid was erased. The mainstream Canadian history curriculum treats this as a sad but inevitable consequence of colonization. This framework recognizes it as the deliberate destruction of a grid node in the planetary grid. Suppression pattern 4, the 40 Alberta sites, documentation of 40 Mississippian Temple Mound culture sites in Alberta. Sites connected directly to Cahokia was described as contrary to the accepted archaeological history of Alberta. The discovery did not transform the curriculum. It did not prompt a national re-examination of Canadian Indigenous history. It remains largely unknown outside specialist circles. The mainstream story of Alberta begins with European settlement. The 40 sites before that settlement are footnotes. So, why are the Canadian tribes the kicker? We began the 30-day curriculum in Africa at Jebel Arud, Morocco, 315,000 years ago, where the oldest anatomically modern human remains on Earth were found carrying the same red ochre tradition that the Beothuk of Newfoundland carried in the 19th century Common Era. We followed that original family across 14 nodes of the planetary grid. We documented their copper science, their astronomical instruments, their mound building technology, their transoceanic navigation, their pharmaceutical knowledge encoded in botanical remains found in 3,000-year-old Egyptian mummies. And now, on day 15, we arrive at the place where the Rise United Omniversity stands, the land that Colonel Titus Cornelius defended, the territory where my family genealogy runs through 200 years of documented presence. The Titus name was a signal. Well, you'll see that in the records, okay? The Canadian tribes are the kicker because they closed the circle. The Anishinaabe called themselves the original people and steward the copper that powered the entire continental grid. The Haudenosaunee built the governance model that became the U.S. Constitution. The Micmac preserved mound knowledge and oral tradition that professional archaeology ignored. The Beothuk carried the oldest sacred practice on earth, red ochre on the bones of the dead, to the Atlantic shore of Canada. The Blackfoot built astronomical monuments older than Stonehenge on the Alberta plains. This is not Black history that happened somewhere else, long ago in distant civilizations. This is Black history that happened here in Canada, on this land, under these feet, and it is still happening in every First Nations community that maintains its ceremonies, its language, its relationship to the land, its knowledge of the grid. Do you understand what I'm talking about? The melanated tribes were here a long time ago. The bluefish caves will tell you that, right? 24,000 years ago. We've been here. So the fact that we're trying to talk about migration and all these other things from other places when we've been here, okay? The culture's been here. In the Yukon, 30,000 years, right? You see the people in the Yukon? You see those tribes? Blacker than me, 3, 4 times darker than me, living in Yukon. Why do you think that is? Ain't melanin supposed to get lighter when you travel north? Check out the science, yo. There's a lot of science behind it. We can talk about that another time. I think I did it on one of the days. I think the recent days, 13 or 14. All right. So check it out. I'm not saying that I'm right all the time. What I'm saying is that I'm trying to give you the truth and be honest. Right. I think I said the mounds were not burial, but most of them are burial. Well, a lot of them are burial, but a lot of them are actually nodes. Right. Electromagnetic nodes for the grid. That is why I wanted to bring up all the mound culture today to show you that the Washita are some original ass people of this world. And their science is very old, 130,000 years old plus. Show some respect, finally. Jeez. The goddess was right, man. Show some respect. Anyway, you have yourself a wonderful day. The Canadian Tribes of Canada, we love you. And I'm going to be contacting y'all soon because guess what? You have a lot of evidence for claims now. They got a lot to give back. I tell you that right now, boy. Damn! The grid is going to reveal it all. Anyway, you have yourself a wonderful day. Day 15 done. Day 16 tomorrow. Come and check it out. You're going to have a great time, all right? Take care, everyone. I hope you're enjoying this 30-day Black History lesson. Day 15 signing off. Day 16 tomorrow. Neshatap Matt out. Coach Titus out. Thank you again for coming out.